It seems like a very US deal, but there certainly will be implications here in Asia.
This is To The Point, your briefing on Asia's entertainment business. I'm Janine Stein.
And I'm Patrick Frater.
Today we'll talk about Paramount's acquisition of Warner, the Asia angle, plus ups and downs for Asian films and talent in Berlin. And then we'll take a look at Chinese box office and other earnings wins in Asia.
So let's get to it, Janine.
I've been digging into the Asia implications of Paramount's likely acquisition of Warner Brothers. So we're going to split it into film and TV, which are obviously different teams across Asia. And then now the channels and streaming platforms. So, Patrick, you kick it off with film, the film distribution.
Yeah, let's first of all remember what a big shock this was on Friday. The news seemed to break very, very quickly. There have been conferences between White House officials and Netflix only on Thursday, still trying seemingly to lobby in favor of the Netflix takeover of Warner Brothers. And then overnight Asian time, probably late Thursday US time, we heard that Netflix had walked away, that they'd pocketed a $2.8 billion breakup fee, and the company was going to be acquired by Skydance Paramount for $111 billion. That was all the talk on Friday, and probably early part of this weekend as well. But you and I are going to try and break it down for Asia. I think that's important. It seems like a very US deal, but there certainly will be implications here in Asia. I have written that there are many questions about regulation and so on to be had, but I've also suggested that this is a really big bet on theatrical. Warner's studio, which has just had a fantastic year in 2025, and this year, 2026, is a year in which all of the 6 major US studios are back up to full speed in terms of production after COVID. And then there was another hiatus caused by the 2023 twin strikes in Hollywood, which has delayed the studios getting back to full speed. And box office is still considerably below 2019 levels, pre-COVID levels. So this year, 2026, is seen as a big test of the theatrical industry. And in theory, we now have 2 studios producing 25 to 30 movies each per year, coming under the same banner, Paramount, Skydance, Warner, Discovery, whatever we're calling it. And that's a lot. And I can't see how any one corporation, first of all, is going to sustain that level of production. Movies in Hollywood cost a lot to make these days. Hundreds of millions of dollars to produce, and then $80 to $100 million for global marketing. You're talking about $200 to $250 million, which they're going to be putting out per week on new product if they're really having 60 new movies per year. So I bite my tongue and suggest that there may be consolidation and pullback because these two are duplications, whereas the Netflix deal would have been additive. You would have had a theatrical company being acquired by a streaming company. So this is fundamentally different. And then that brings us on to the questions of distribution, of how those films are going to get into market. Now, there has been for several years, maybe many decades, I'm not sure quite how long the history goes back, a company called UIP, United International Pictures, which was essentially a joint venture between Paramount and Universal to release their movies and have an efficient distribution office in most major markets. Well, about a decade or more ago, those companies kind of went their own way and set up their own offices because they were sufficiently large in major markets like the UK and Germany and others that they felt they could do that. And UIP, the rump of UIP, has mostly operated in smaller territories, and that includes Southeast Asia. So now we've got a realignment potentially where the Paramount films and the Warner films are under the same roof. So it strikes me that UIP could end up being broken up within Southeast Asia, and that Paramount will align itself with Warner for distribution. if they think that's necessary. And that means that also Universal, now the unwanted suitor, is either going to have to step up and set up its own offices in all these Southeast Asian territories, or it's going to have to find a new partner like Sony or Disney. Some of those partnerships have existed in the past and could be reinstated. But I also wonder how necessary that's going to be, or how easy that's going to be, given that Hollywood itself is not doing very well in large parts of East Asia. The world's four largest box office markets in order these days are North America, China, Japan, and India. And so we've got three of those four are Asian. And in each of those three, Hollywood films do not command more than 20% of the national box office. So Hollywood is already in a bit of a corner. So I think there's plenty of questions to be asked over the future of theatrical distribution of those Hollywood movies from those 2 or 3 studios concerned coming up over the next months. The regulators are going to take a few months to sort out this deal, but I suspect we will start to hear how the distribution landscape will be remapped over the coming months and before that deal even completes.
So loads of changes there. Is there a lot of are there a lot of people? Are there a lot of jobs involved in these distribution networks?
Well, distribution companies are not very large companies. They're not employing they're not thousands of jobs, but they can be tens or even hundreds of jobs across the region. There's a lot of marketing folk involved, a lot of people involved in booking cinemas and doing the advertising and promotion work, and that means these days that means a lot of social media work as well. So those people are going to, find themselves in duplicate positions perhaps, and I don't know what's going to happen to them.
So I think for me the big duplication is in TV programming distribution, because Paramount and Warner Brothers do exactly the same thing. This is where the bloodbath will happen, if there is a bloodbath. So it's in TV distribution, and then it's channels distribution, and then there's streaming as well. So there's HBO Max and Paramount Plus. Paramount Plus doesn't really have a good footprint in Asia. They have some branded blocks. They've got in Australia. They have a significant presence, as I think does HBO Max. But HBO Max was a latecomer. It hasn't. I don't think it's managed to take root as anyone would have hoped. The one thing that I was thinking of is that now that Netflix has all this money and it always had a lot of money, and it always was a front runner in streaming production, original production. Now Netflix has all this money, so actually the production industry might benefit a lot. And I'm hoping that happens, because Netflix's commitment to production in Asia has changed, but not necessarily changed for the worse. It's changed for the better. So they've adjusted, and they've been very agile in looking at market realities, seeing where they can fix it, implementing wide training programs to, I guess, educate people the Netflix way, which is not a bad thing, because you can't take that learning and that experience away, which is good for me. Obviously, I'll be watching it very closely, but I think that's one positive from this.
Did you want to have a look at how it might play out in India?
I did. In India, Discovery has Discovery Plus. I haven't heard a lot about it lately, so they may be winding it down, or they may not. It was Discovery's crown jewel, if there was a crown jewel, in Asia. So India was the only place that had Discovery Plus. So that, I guess, a question mark hangs over that. HBO threw its lot in with GeoStar. So it's an output deal, and a very lucrative output deal by all accounts. Same in Japan. So Unext took all the Warner HBO programming. So in that sense, that just carries on until obviously the new entity, or until Paramount decides what it wants to do. But those are multi-year deals. I think they've still got quite a long way to go. So we'll see no disruption there for the moment. I think the winner here would be Asian producers.
Let's hope so. That sounds like that's a very positive thing if you're right.
And Netflix has already consolidated its power amongst Asian producers. People do not trust HBO on the original front, and they don't trust Amazon Prime because they came in with a lot of talk that never really happened, or they made all these commitments and then wound them back very quickly. And I think once you've lost that kind of trust, I think it's very hard to get back. Netflix, for whatever people say, good or bad, they are staying the course. So I put my money on Netflix. Moving on, there were some Asian wins and losses from the Berlin Film Festival.
Yes, the Berlin Festival wrapped up about a week ago. It's one of the major 3 or 4 film festivals of the year, and had a very good, strong Asian contingent across its many different sections. And it's a very wide festival, ranging from pretty mainstream films through to some experimental and art house titles. So Asia was well represented across the selection and what people in Germany could see. Um, However, Asia came away almost completely empty-handed in terms of final prizes, which was a bit of a surprise to me and certainly a bit of a disappointment to me. I've said before that I don't think you can ever read too much into a single festival's prizes, because it's down to a particular jury or a particular selection of films. They may not have had the strongest selection, or the jury may be looking elsewhere. So there's a question mark, but I'm not too worried yet. The best news for Asia was the recognition for Michelle Yeoh, our Malaysian superstar, Hong Kong trained superstar, who's had a career revival over the last 10 years and is now properly a global star, which is delightful. She was given an honorary Golden Bear at the beginning of the Berlin Film Festival. So she was on stage and celebrated accordingly. She then went to Hollywood and was given a star on the Walk of Fame there. So she's had quite a week, or quite a last couple of weeks. So that was very pleasing. But the bigger news coming out of Berlin was actually just how political that festival has been. It happened almost from the beginning. People were lobbing questions at members of the jury at the jury press conference on the first day of the film festival, and they seemed to get some rather unsatisfactory answers. Wim Wenders, who was the jury president, said that filmmakers should stay out of politics and film festivals should stay out of politics, which struck me as a very strange answer from him, and it struck me as a very strange answer for the Berlin Film Festival, which has often embraced issues. I mean, it's one of the leading festivals campaigning for LGBTQ representation. So for him to say that politics and film festivals should be 2 separate things was a strange thing, and there was a lot of blowback against what he said. But there was also a big discussion over Germany's position and the festival's position and filmmakers' positions, and how much can be said about Israel and Palestine. This led to the film festival director, a woman named Trisha Tuttle, who's a very experienced festival head, having to put out an open letter in the middle of the festival, trying to say that, yes, politics is welcome, people's voices are welcome, this is what film festivals should be doing, but by the way, respect some rules of politeness and so on. And by the way, the festival is not trying to take a position left or right, pro or anti-Palestinian, pro or anti-Israeli or whatever. However, even that attempt at diplomacy was rather upended when on the closing day, during the prize ceremony, one of the prize winners stood up and said that the Berlin Festival and the German government were not doing enough, and they were supporting Israel too much. And the problem with that is, although it may be a question of free speech that you're allowed to voice your opinion, the German government is also the same German government that is funding the film festival. So this filmmaker was somewhat biting the hand that fed the festival and paid for his prize. And this whole political scenario, one thing after another, led to a bit of an inquiry. The German culture minister got involved, and just in the last couple of days, they held a sort of a one-day meeting as to whether the film festival director, Trisha Tuttle, who did not make those comments, whether she should keep her job or not. The outcome for the moment seems that she will be keeping her job, but I think this is going to be a difficult thing for all film festival heads. How to keep a lid on discussion, how to encourage discussion, but politely.
I'm with Trisha Tuttle on this because I do think film festivals are the perfect place for discussion. This is where discussion should actually happen. But I also think organizers need to find a line that is acceptable, not acceptable to everyone. There's always going to be someone to standing up and screaming about something, but I think that should be an accepted part of the discourse. Just because someone stands up screaming pro or anti something, whatever it is, it could be any part of the world. There's 1,000 conflicts. Let's pick one, but they do need to find a way to accept that some people are going to be very angry, but move through it, because excluding politics from film festivals makes them what? Like, this is where things should be discussed. So
exactly,
the question I have,
films are opinionated, so they go.
and they should be. This is where you can tell stories and expose people to different views and different politics. But so Berlin kicks it all off. What impact do you think this has on Asian film festivals?
Well, that's a hard one to be sure, because Asian film festivals have often avoided politics as much as possible. And these opening day jury press conferences, I've often sort of thought should be lampooned, because they're usually so dull and boring within Asian film festivals. People try and say absolutely nothing. The one in Berlin is at the opposite extreme, where
Well, you can see why it's much more exciting to have a Berlin one. I'm not an excitement junkie.
but
Actually, I am.
the Berlin one is, it seems to be a bit unfair. You could have any member of the media or the public who might have been let into those press conferences lobbing a question about any conflict or any other dispute at people who are really not experts at these things. And I think the Berlin press conference is one extreme, and the Asian ones are the other extreme, and perhaps they should all think about either how these things are done better, or even abandon the jury press conference and have political discussions which are within the festival but better structured, and find the right forums for them.
I don't know that there's an easy answer to this, but I do think it's one worth pursuing. And they're not going to get it right every time, but I don't believe Trisha Tuttle should lose her job. That's me.
I'm with you on that.
Now on to China.
Let's move on to the China box office.
China box office and IMAX.
We're about 2 weeks into the Chinese New Year box office season. In mainland China, this is the high point of the year in terms of cinema revenue. Many distributors and producers will save up their biggest films in order to come out on the first day of the Lunar New Year celebrations. And it's very keenly watched as to not only which films are successful, but also the overall volume of business in the industry. This year, the bald figures for the first 7 days look a little bit weak. Like for like comparison with last year suggests that box office overall in China was down by more than 30%. But that's a little bit misleading, I think. Firstly, because 2025 was the year of Ne Zha 2, an absolutely outlandishly large top scoring film, which eventually earned more than $2 billion at the Chinese box office, completely unheard of in China or anywhere else. So comparing with that is already a bit weird. Secondly, the Chinese New Year holidays are a movable feast, and they start on different days each year. So if you simply take those first 7 days and measure it against another 7 days, you may come up with a different answer. Well, and I've been calculating the different figures over the releasing period, and we are now over $1 billion, 1.6, I think it is, $1.06 billion has been earned by Chinese cinemas in the first 11 days. So, okay, it's not the quite the large figures of last year, but they're still very substantial. This is more than a seventh of China's annual total has been earned in less than the last 2 weeks. So it's still pretty significant, and it's pretty important for cinemas, which have been having a rough time in China, and we're going to see perhaps a little bit of a relief for some of those who had been on fairly rocky ground. Before I turn to IMAX, which is obviously one of the big beneficiaries for this, I just wanted to go through the numbers and look at the individual films that have been winners. I'm looking away because I'm getting the numbers up. Pegasus 3, a car race action comedy family entertainment film, is by far the big winner. My calculation is that it's earned $524 million of gross revenue in those 11 days. So that's more than half of the China box office. This is the clear outstanding winner. It's far bigger than also the other films, the previous two films in the film franchise. And people have been at pains to question why this film has been quite so successful this time. Because the reviews have not been particularly complimentary. Nobody's seen that it's the best film ever. But it's got I think the answer has to be that it has a huge car racing action sequence in the last second half of the movie. It's about a 45-minute sequence, and people are obviously talking a lot about that. And then we have a couple of other films. We have a martial arts action film called Blades of the Guardians, which has got a group of big stars, Wu Jing, Nicholas Che, and Jet Li among them. And this film has earned $150 million US, almost exactly the same figure as the latest Zhang Yimou film called Scare Out, which is a national security espionage thriller. And those are the three runaway winners, with the annual cartoon from Fantawild Animation called Boonie Bears. This one is called Boonie Bears, The Hidden Protector, and that's done $130 million already at the box office. And I expect we'll see the next film in the franchise coming out for Chinese New Year 2027. It's a fixture now.
It's a fixture, and good for them. They're also a fixture on the TV space. What about IMAX?
Well, IMAX it was one of the big winners for the Chinese New Year. We saw them earning about $28 million in their cinemas in that Chinese New Year period. The company also put out their annual results the other day, and those leaped enormously. By, I think the figure is more than 80%. Revenue was not that much bigger, but the profits leaped a lot, not only because of the box office, reflecting the box office, but also reflecting the mix of films. Last year, they released fewer Hollywood films and more Chinese films in the IMAX format, reflecting market tastes, but also that helps the company because they have a much higher take rate, that's their phrase, for the Chinese films which are locally made and shown in IMAX, rather than the Hollywood ones which are then converted into IMAX for China.
My win. I don't necessarily specialize in finance, it's not my favorite thing to do, but when there's a big win like this, it's Media Premier in Malaysia. So their content sales revenue has surged something like 85%. The company is in profit, but that's because loads and loads of cost cutting. So hopefully that will end. But it's encouraging to see that they are selling their homegrown Malaysian content regionally. They don't break down who they actually sold it to. But I know that the big stream, Netflix certainly, doesn't produce in Malaysia. So they obviously want the Malaysian audience, so they acquire. And the interesting thing is that these are mostly free TV series. So there's no cannibalization. It's all additive. And I think that people do watch on streaming. Netflix has already proved it. Even if it is a broadcast TV show, people watch it on streaming. And my other win of the week was the Philippines family drama Meet, Greet and Buy, which was the Philippines' top box office earner last year, and it debuted on Netflix non-English film top 10. This is global for the week to 22nd of February at number 6. So that was ahead of the Indian blockbuster Durandar, which of course which has been on the list for 4 weeks. So it makes sense that it's dropping. But it also came in ahead of the Korean original, which is Pavan, which came in at number 7. The Philippines theatrical release did better than the Netflix Korean original, which
That's a rarity, isn't it, Janine?
It's rare, and I think it was interesting. It's worth mentioning. It's also one of 4 Korean features on Netflix's 2026 slate, so there's more to come. Yeah, there were 4 Asian titles on the global top 10 movie list, non-English movie list, so that's 40% of the total. It's okay.
I wanted to just throw in one other thing which we haven't talked about. One of the other companies to announce their results this week was the Chinese streaming company iQIYI. Their revenue was essentially flat or slightly down for the full year, not very different from the previous year, but they went from profit into loss in 2025. And I've been tracking this company for a long time, and it's been a terrible investment, but I've always quite admired their taste and their entrepreneurialism. This is a company which has in the last year or so embraced vertical video. They're trying to put more vertical video onto their very traditional long form streaming platform for series and films. And they've also recently opened their first theme park in China. So they're trying things. And in the past, they've tried different forms of on-demand film exhibition. So this is a company who's always trying new things, but it's not working for them at the moment. But one of the things that always interests me is to look at their subscriber numbers, which they've now stopped revealing. But in each of the last several quarterly results, they've been claiming to have growth in Southeast Asia. And I think some of that appears to be backed up by the reports that we both get from Media Partners Asia and others saying that Chinese language content is growing in Southeast Asia. I'd love to see how this is quantified, or at least turned into subscriber numbers from this company or from any of the others, because at the moment it's a bold statement and we're not getting any facts or any data to back it up. What do you stand on that?
I think a lot of the platforms in Asia are doing distribution partnerships, revenue share distribution partnerships. So they certainly, if people are honest and transparent about revenue, they will know what the subscriber numbers are to that specific service. But we never really get a reveal on that. I think Media Partners Asia does a good job analyzing what they do release. But in terms of iQIYI, yes, Chinese content is a lot more popular. Basically, Korean content got very expensive. So a lot of platforms stopped buying it, or they just bought a lot more selectively. Also, a lot of the way Korean was distributed, it just wasn't that available to them.
Interesting. Is your point about revenue sharing agreements to say that subscription numbers, which we used to rely on for analyzing how well a streamer is doing, is no longer the correct metric?
I think if it's disclosed to us, which it isn't, if it's disclosed, the subscriber numbers are different from the revenue. So we can get the subscriber numbers or we can guess them. We just don't know what the revenue split is.
Right.
So, and they say revenue share, but what's the share? How share? I like iQIYI. I think they do very interesting programs. They were the one that did Kin Porsche, the lots of LGBTQ in Thailand, and I think in some parts of the rest of Southeast Asia. So it's an interesting company. They are prepared to take bets and risks. They're not necessarily, I'm sure in China they toe the line, but elsewhere they don't necessarily toe the line. In Taiwan, they can't distribute openly. So there's different politics across the region for all these streamers. I sometimes look at WeTV, although I sort of forget about it mostly. But WeTV is another one that's apparently doing quite well in Thailand.
They don't have the same publicity and PR effort.
They're just not Maybe that's our failing. We don't dig into them, but they don't make a big song and dance. But Aichi used to. Something that you said, moving into experiences. I think this experiences space is one that's worth exploring.
And that also brings us back to Fanta Wild, which we've mentioned on this conversation earlier. Fanta Wild is, in my mind, primarily a theme parks business, which then moved into animation.
I might be biased. I really like the people from Fanta Wild, so I view them self-declaration. I view them positively. So,
Well,
but
so
they do nice stuff. Boonie Bears. Who's objecting to Boonie Bears? Who? Like, show me the Grinch who's objecting to Boonie Bears.
I
So,
can't, and I won't even try.
right. And on
Janine,
that,
I think this is where we say thank you very much for this week. This has been To the Point with Janine Stein and Patrick Frater, and I hope that we can see you all next week. Thank you, Janine.
thanks for joining us. Thanks, Patrick. See you.